Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys about one of the questions I got the other day of people asking me, hey, I see what you're doing with your own training right now. Would you recommend this for a novice lifter, someone in their first year of training? And the answer is no. No, I wouldn't. Now, I am actually, as I hinted to other people, I'm going to work this into a multi-phase system, kind of what I'm doing right now. But what I'm doing in the phase I'm in at this moment is I am picking 4 different days a week with 4 different lifts, and I'm focusing on those big, heavy lifts. What I'm doing is I'm picking a weight that I can do sets of 3 with and building until I get to 10 sets of 3. When I can comfortably do 10 sets of 3, I add weight and then restart the cycle. And again, this lets you do a lot of things. I've discussed so far a lot of what this has to do as far as gaining more strength with the same amount of muscle mass in terms of hypertrophy, as long as you pay attention to recovery. And there's plenty of data on that at this point. This also teaches you to be good at being strong on your first reps over time. It teaches you to perfect your setup because you're having to set up, not even just for your warm-ups start adding in too, but you're having to set up and get the lift into the correct positions and starting positions and everything up to 10 times in a workout. This allows for a lot of first reps, a lot of setups. It allows for lift mastery. And because you're stopping it at fairly low reps, you're not really building that metabolic fatigue up. You're not building the same fatigue that causes your form to degrade. It is a method to teach you to stay fast, to stay explosive, and to focus on technique. It's a method that allows you to master an exercise and pretty much gain muscle and strength at a very, very fast pace as far as all things being relative. Now, as I said before, I'm probably going to do this into phases. I'm probably going to write this into a full system when I'm kind of done getting it all fine-tuned of kind of how this sort of system should work as far as a template goes and a protocol that you could plug and play. Because again, if I do something like that, I want it to be comprehensive. The problem we run into is, what if a novice lifter wants to run a program like this? Because any program you put out or break down, everyone wants to start it if it's effective. So you almost would need to do versions to where a novice could run it. And truth be told, I'm going to say the novice doesn't need to be doing triples. A novice lifter who doesn't want to run one of my other programs, who wanted to start this particular protocol, if they don't have a strength base built, and you guys know my standards, I'd like to see someone be able to squat 315, that's 3 plates aside, full depth for 5 reps. I'd like to see them be able to bench 225 for 5. I would like to see them deadlift 405 for 5. That's my ideal numbers. Now, does a person have to fully reach those to go to triples? No. But I would rather them do 5 rep sets. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, wait, you're going to have people build up to 9 or 10 sets of 5 in a workout on a big exercise? Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't we do that? What's the problem with it? People say, well, that's too much workload. Again, we go back to our point. It's not too much workload. It's just enough workload. People make these big mistakes in thinking that volume is your sets and reps. When we're talking about recovery, growth stimulating volume, everything else, nothing could be further from the truth. You know what I would consider volume to be? Sets times reps times weight on the bar times distance moved. What I mean by that, if someone can squat 300 pounds for 5 reps versus someone who squats 150 pounds for 5 reps, are their 5 rep sets equally taxing on their recovery? No. As a person who can squat 300 for 5 reps and need more total volume to stimulate new growth, yes. And his total volume might be even more in terms of total reps that he needs to perform, total tonnage that he needs to perform. It might be more than double. It might be more than double what the weaker person needs to stimulate growth. But the point is, the recovery is not the same. The same thing, if you squat, let's say you have a person who does 300-pound squats for 5 reps, and they go all the way to parallel versus someone who stops 4 or 5 inches short of parallel. Who beat up their recovery more? The person who went to parallel. Who did more work? The person who went to parallel. He moved the weight further. He did more total work. And he did more total work in the hardest part of the exercise. So that really, if you really want to factor in volume, volume is more of a function of the total amount of work that you did. That's how we should define volume. How much total workload were those muscles in your body and your bone structure and everything subjected to? Because that's what people forget. There's structural recovery as well. You get microfractures in your bones from lifting. That has to be recovered from also. You put stress on your connective tissue when lifting. You put stress on your nervous system when lifting. It's not all about the muscle recovering. That is not the only factor. And all of these things get impacted by the amount of tonnage involved. It's not 3 by 10 is a set of volume. All right, it's 3 by 10 depending upon the amount of weight you have on the bar and how far you moved it relative to your range of motion and total distance. All right, that's a reason some taller lifters complain that pound for pound they're not as strong as a shorter lifter. They're moving the weight a lot further, the same amount of weight. That's a factor. So when we factor this in back with the noob, what does this mean for the noob? Noobs aren't strong enough to generate big tonnages. They aren't. And they don't have their technique perfected. If we have the noob do sets of 5 instead of sets of 3, they're going to generate more total tonnage in a workload, in a workout. Noobs struggle to generate tonnage on big lifts when we drop them down to doubles and triples. They just don't have enough strength to put enough weight on the bar for it to really give them the effect we want. And we don't need to perfect their speed strength yet. They can get real strong on sets of 5. They can get really strong on sets of 5, and it allows them to generate more tonnage, and they're going to need that to gain muscle more quickly. When you get stronger, you can generate more and more tonnage with triples. I think the noobs, I would rather them do sets of 5, because we also go back to points about injury rates. I think when doing triples, because we're dealing with a heavier weight and noobs haven't mastered their exercises to the same extent yet, because again, this is all about lift mastery. One of the benefits of higher set training like that with lower reps is that you're mastering the lift. Noobs haven't mastered the lift. They're going to be slightly higher risk of injury. I would just much rather see a novice lifter do sets of 5 on a system like this. Come in, they're going to squat, then build up to 10 sets of 5 of the weight, then increase the weight and go back to whatever 5 by 5, 5 by 6, or 6 by 5, and build it back up from there. And they could do that with their big lifts, and they could certainly run a system like this and get away with it as long as they have sufficient overlap. As long as they have sufficient overlap. Meaning, if you're getting a standing press is one of those lifts, a deadlift is one of those lifts, a squat is one of those lifts, big movements where you're going to get a big overlap of muscle groups. A system like this will be fine because most of the volume is coming from that one big exercise and your accessories. I think a noob could run this and be fine, this sort of system. But they really need to spend a month or two perfecting their technique on all the exercises they're going to use before they jump into a system like this. Their form needs to be dialed in. They need to stick with the slightly higher reps, 5s, to continue to get their form dialed in before they go to really heavy poundages. And they need the additional workload. Because again, going back to the other point, a person who can do 300 pounds for 5 reps can generate a lot more tonnage on squats over several sets than a person who does 150. All right, and that person doing 150, I would much rather him try to do 140 and build that up to 10 sets of 5. All right, that's what I would rather him do than him try to go all the way up to his 5 rep max and bang out a bunch of triples. Again, I think his form's going to degrade too quickly. He's going to need the extra volume to build his support musculature. And that's just my opinion. And if I'm going to write a system like this and I were to recommend it, that's just the direction I would go for the novice lifter. Someone inside of that first year of serious training, I just think they would do better on 5s than with 3s. Again, just in terms of overall strength development, overall volume. I think the 3s just might be a little too heavy without quite enough perfection of their technique and form before they jump into something like that. I just think that their injury rates would be a little lower and their overall size gains would be a little bit better doing the 5s on this. And then after 6 months or a year of that, then they could ease into trying to build up to 10 sets of 3 on the same exercises or variations of those exercises. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.